The concept of human cloning raises this alarming possibility. Clones might be manufactured solely for their organs, a fear reflected in popular culture. In the 1978 film Parts, The Clonus Horror, clones are created for just such a purpose. Clonus is a secret colony of clones. They're being raised to provide spare parts for the failing bodies of their wealthy and powerful originals.
You murder to do it.
If they're not really human, is it murder?
In the movie, clones created for organ harvesting have to die in order for their originals to live. Because the film's scientists can't clone single limbs or hearts without cloning the entire person, the clone's fate amounts to human sacrifice. Some have suggested this could happen if human cloning moves forward.
One of the really frightening byproducts of the cloning technology is the possibility of creating a whole subclass of people that may be created without civil rights, people who are actually chattels. They're property of someone else for no other purpose than spare parts harvest.
And this could lead to terrifying exploitation of hapless human beings if a new liver is needed suddenly and the clone is called forth from the farm and delivered. I don't think this is a serious cause for terror. We do have laws. These would be people, these clones. They would be protected by the same laws that protect us now from going out into the streets and kidnapping somebody to get organs from.
Clones should be protected from being generated just to create a spare heart or liver. But if the needed organ is one we each have two of, say a kidney, a clone may be the ideal donor.
Your new kidney is going to go right here in your lower abdomen.
This is an intriguing thought to patients suffering from kidney failure, like Kate Sullivan. Faced with a lifetime of dialysis, she recently had to ask someone close to her to make a difficult decision.
My sister and I are super close, and I couldn't think of anybody else that would go through the kind of surgery that it is. I mean, it's not simple, and there's a lot of pain involved and a lot of healing. And I don't think you can just ask anybody to do that.
As soon as I found out that she needed a kidney and that a living related donor would be the best one, I said that she could have mine.
When the day of the operation arrived, the sisters were prepared for surgery together. It would be crucial for the kidney to be transplanted from Sarah to Kate without delay. The transplant was a success, and a few months later, Kate was in excellent health and well on her way to a full recovery. But Kate must still take 29 pills every day to stop her body from rejecting her sister's kidney. A kidney from her clone would be a perfect match.
If I needed a kidney and I could get one from a clone, I would definitely do it. Because the most important thing would be that you wouldn't have to take the anti-rejection medicine. Because I see what my sister's gone through, and I think that's the hardest thing about the kidney operation, is that she has to take so much medication.
And since Kate's new kidney may only last for 10 to 20 years, she may have to go through the transplant process again. At that time, human cloning may be an option.
Thinking about cloning myself now, it just sounds so freaky. The idea of there'd be another Kate Sullivan in a lab somewhere just getting ripe for the picking of the organs, that sounds too sci-fi. I don't like it.
Certainly, cloning offers a variety of intriguing medical applications. One study is currently underway at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. NIH scientists working on a possible cure for AIDS are with sets of nature-made clones, better known as identical twins. By transplanting blood from a genetically matched healthy twin to their AIDS-infected siblings, scientists hope to strengthen their immune systems.
Clearly, if you're fortunate enough to have a genetically identical twin, there is the possibility of taking cells from the other individual to treat you.
While the study is still considered highly experimental, the possibilities it offers to AIDS patients with twins are very exciting. For those patients without a twin, cloning may be their only access to this potential cure. If cloning turns out to be the miracle cure of the millennium, the potential savings of human lives could overwhelm all opposition. After all, not so long ago, human heart transplants seemed morally suspect. Birth control, a mortal sin, and test tube babies, unthinkable. But if human cloning is discouraged or even banned, the response could realize our greatest fears.
They're here, they're trying to destroy us.
The technology could creep underground into the hands of maverick scientists where anything could happen.
There is much about cloning that we still do not know, but this much we do know. Any discovery that touches upon human creation is not simply a matter of scientific inquiry. It is a matter of morality and spirituality as well. I believe we must respect this profound gift and resist the temptation to replicate ourselves.
Shortly after Dolly's birth was announced, President Clinton took steps towards banning human cloning experiments in the United States. The Bioethics Commission he established called upon Rabbi Dorff, along with several other members of the religious and scientific community, to address the ethics of human cloning.
The commission recommended that cloning be banned, at least temporarily, while further study is done as to exactly what it would involve and what the risks are.
Other world leaders took similar action.
The reaction against the prospect of cloning humans has been worldwide. In his Sunday address, the Pope implied such experiments were dangerous. Today, Italy banned cloning experiments. So did Argentina. And the German government said there should be a worldwide ban on cloning.
I don't think government bans will indeed stop it. First of all, because you'd have to have an international ban on cloning in order to do that. And even if you had an international ban, there's no guarantee whatsoever that it won't happen in some lab somewhere.
Technology, once it's developed, does not go away. It may go underground if sufficiently persecuted.
The technology Dr. Wilmot and his team used to produce Dolly seems simple enough, and the temptation could prove great enough that someone, somewhere, will clone humans despite government bans. Dolly's creator acknowledges that his discovery could lead to that possibility.
I think it's probable that this technique could be developed so that it would work in humans.
One analysis estimates that a cloning lab could be equipped for as little as $140,000. Throw in someone with a knowledge of molecular biology, and human cloning may become as simple as it is in the television series South Park.
You morons give up on your stupid science fair project yet? No, we're already halfway done. Halfway? Then all you've got is a stupid pig. It's more than you've got. Wrong. We've already got our human clone well underway. Oh my God, they cloned a foot. By Friday, we're gonna clone a whole human being. Good luck with your stupid little pig. 2, 3...
For now, the possibility of human cloning becoming child's play or being realized by a mad scientist in an underground lab is still remote. It's unknown if the method that produced Dolly will ultimately work with humans. The way sheep cells divide makes them easier to clone than human cells. And it took years of research and many failed attempts before Dolly herself was born.
Remember that only one of 277 embryos became a lamb. And it's possible that that was the true efficiency of that is actually 1 in 10,000, say, and we were very, very lucky.
Apply these figures to human cloning, and it means a large number of human embryos could be sacrificed along the way, an issue that will hardly go unnoticed.
Scientists have always had the obligation to ask not whether we should do something, but why we are doing this. What is the purpose? What's the objective? And I'm not sure that the scientific community, in fact, I'm positive that the scientific community hasn't come up with any sort of good answer as to why we should clone human beings. Therefore, I don't believe that we should proceed.
Dr. Wilmot has his own reservations about cloning humans.
I don't have a particular religious view. It doesn't come from any philosophical point of view like that. but just simply the point that if you make a copy of an existing person, then you impose on that child particular expectations. Let's say, hypothetically, that you make a copy of an Einstein, say, and the child, like every other child, makes a mistake with his math homework. He's going to be subject to all sorts of sort of extra ridicule and difficulties and so on. Now, that's a trivial example of the kind of thing which would happen all through the life of that child. And so I think those sorts of pressures would be unreasonable.
But perhaps cloning could be used to bring a child into the world without such expectations. For couples with troubled reproductive histories, like Louise and Larry Galbraith, cloning may be the answer. Their first child was stricken with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, a deadly genetic disease which can only be passed on when both parents' genes combine. Louise and Larry have had 2 healthy children since their first passed away, and Louise is again pregnant. Today, Louise's unborn child will be tested for the syndrome.
Well, good news is that I don't see anything in the spine or the abdomen.
Indications are they will have a healthy baby, this time. But for the Galbraiths, reproducing naturally is like playing Russian roulette, and like thousands of other couples, they would benefit from human cloning. By copying the DNA from just one parent to make a clone, they would bypass lethal genetic combinations. Cloning could be used by infertile couples as a reproductive option. And taking the scenario to an even greater extreme, it could help same-sex couples have children without the need for a biological father. Remember, all of Dolly's parents are female. She has a DNA donor mother, another mother provided the empty egg cell, and a third surrogate mother carried her to term.
Stir, stir, stir the boat gently down the slough. Oh, honey.
Colleen Miller and Stephanie Brill are a same-sex couple living in Berkeley, California. To them, human cloning offers an interesting option. The couple are currently raising Stephanie's 7-year-old daughter, Gitanjali, but they are now attempting to have a child of their own.
I've been trying to get pregnant for about 9 months, and I think the idea of cloning is a fascinating concept.
Colleen and Stephanie are trying to get pregnant with the help of a sperm bank, but cloning could someday allow them to reproduce without a sperm donor, keeping the DNA in the family. Using the same technique that cloned Dolly, an egg from Colleen could be fused with a cell from Stephanie to create their child. Reproductive options taken to this extreme may make many people uncomfortable. But even more disturbing is the possibility of the same technology leading to involuntary reproduction. Could you be cloned without your consent? All someone would need is a little bit of your DNA. With human cloning technology in the foreseeable future, we may have to be careful where we leave our DNA. Dr. Wayne Grody is the director of the DNA Diagnostic Laboratory at UCLA. His lab tests people for various genetic disorders, using samples of their DNA. Once the tests are completed, the DNA sample is kept in cold storage in case further tests are needed. Grody's got a freezer full of DNA, just ripe for the picking.
If someone really wanted access to your DNA, there's many ways they can get it without breaking into my laboratory. Every time you apply for insurance, you have to give a blood sample for cholesterol and a urine sample for sugar. They can easily get DNA out of both of those sources. Every time you have a haircut, there's DNA on the floor of the barber shop.
Every lock of hair and drop of blood contains our DNA. But because they don't contain whole living cells, these samples could not be used to make a clone, using the nuclear transfer method. But who's to say another cloning technology isn't a viable possibility? One that requires nothing more than a fingernail clipping. DNA can endure for thousands, even millions of years. Long after we're gone, any one of us or anything that once lived may one day be cloned. Imagine dinosaurs walking the earth again. Rather than fantasize about using cloning to bring extinct species back, some scientists believe we should be developing the technology to prevent currently endangered species from dying out.
Many endangered species of animals that we're concerned with, those, for example, that have been listed under the U.S. Endangered Species Act, have in fact dwindled to only a few dozen individuals.
Dr. Michael Lynch is an evolutionary biologist at the University of Oregon. While intrigued by the opportunities cloning offers, he warns there could be a disastrous downside.
The fundamental idea here is that if you're reproducing clonally, you inherit the complete legacy of bad genes that your mother had, plus you incur a new series of mutations yourself.
When the dwindling numbers of a species force the animals to begin inbreeding, the species ceases to evolve and genetic defects result.
Florida panther is one possible example of an endangered species of mammal that's dwindled to very small population size, an isolated population in the Everglades. It appears to express a number of genetic defects that one doesn't see in other panther populations. For example, undescended testicles in the males, kinked tail in the males, and so on.
Cloning could only prove a short-term solution for a dying species. A wide base of sexually active adults is needed to prevent genetic mutations. The same problem with reproductive cloning holds true for humans.
Cloning is worse than inbreeding. At least there's a little bit of variety left with inbreeding. With cloning, there's no variety.
Even with all the information we now have about cloning, the answer to one remaining question could end the human cloning debate once and for all. To find out how cloning affects aging, we must solve the riddle of the sheep. How old is Dolly? Is she truly a young sheep, or just an old sheep trapped in a young sheep's body?
It is an interesting question to ask, really, what age Dolly is. I mean, now she is a year old, and the cells that she was developed from were from a ewe who was 6 years old. So the question is in any way Dolly 7 years old?
If Dolly turns out to be the age of her DNA donor, then a baby cloned from a 70-year-old woman might have the life expectancy of just a few years. But if Dolly is indeed the young sheep that she appears, Wilmot and his colleagues may have discovered the genetic fountain of youth.
One thing that hasn't been thought through very carefully is the absolute impossibility of cloning memories and experiences. These are not genetically controlled, as I understand the workings of the brain. These are impresses that are formed during life.
Brain is tissue, and mind is something that's a combination of the tissue, the thoughts, the learning, the long-term memory, all the things that we really don't understand. And those are things that happen through development. Can we clone a brain? Yes. Can we clone a mind? I don't think so.
Until the day when another Dr. Wilmot does what was thought impossible and discovers how to duplicate the mind, we will have to make judgments based on what we do know about human cloning. To date, our perception of clones has been colored by science fiction novels and movies. We must separate fact from fiction before we discover whether human cloning is miracle or madness.
I think we need to have the debate because we need to, as a society, examine what our moral standards are. We need to decide what we really mean, what is life, what's quality of life, who deserves to live a long time, whose DNA gets to be replicated. A lot of those questions are very basic to our right to reproduce, and that's something that we need to always be talking about.
While clones may not be the mindless drones or dreaded Frankenstein-like creatures we've seen on the silver screen, should we fear them or embrace them? Those on both sides of the argument admit there is much to be debated.
If we don't consider that now, we're not going to have time to set a statutory agenda on how to deal with this technology before it's upon us. And I really think we ought to be looking at this technology before we're faced with a human equivalent of Dolly the sheep.
I think that part of the public reaction to the idea of cloning, of making copies, is because people just don't understand. It all goes with theatrical images and films like Boys from Brazil and this sort of thing. And reality just isn't like that. I mean, we can say these are the things which we think it could do which would be useful, and it will just take a little time for people to get used to what can be achieved and to pick out for themselves what they think is acceptable.
But we may not have much time.
Well, unfortunately, people tend to get frightened by the unknown and the unfamiliar. Some have profound religious objections to anything that has no scriptural referent, and this certainly doesn't. And some just enjoy the thrill of being scared. For all of these people, my advice is don't be cloned. You won't like it.
Coming up, real lives, real convictions, real survival, real emotion. This is the struggle, the redemption, and the stories along the way. It's Real Lives, right here on the Discovery Civilization Channel.